Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
This is the digital asset investor. I want to make a statement here before I begin, and that is that the Ripple XRP fire will be lit by utility, stoked by speculation, and will become out of control because of financial crisis. That's what I truly believe. I believe that once utility is realized in XRP, it'll be followed by massive speculation. But I believe that ultimately financial crisis will drive even more money into digital assets than anyone even expected. Today I wanted to go over, earlier I didn't see a whole lot in the news that I found that interesting and worthy of talking about today. A couple of things cropped up, and I'll go over those. But one thing that did catch my eye was this article from Zero Hedge. Ron Paul warns Turkey now, America later. And what he's talking about is what I've talked to you about a little bit in the past, and that is right now Trump had imposed some sanctions on Turkey, and it has turned into Turkey having a currency crisis. But what Ron Paul says in the article is that it's really not the sanctions that caused it. It's Turkey's irresponsible behavior over the last few years, such as having too much debt and money printing and those type of things that have really caused their currency crisis. But he's making the point that America is even worse off than Turkey because we've been even more responsible. But it's not just America or Turkey, it's the world's problem. But I wanted to read to you what he says here in this article, just a couple of things. The results of the Turkish government's inflation-fueled spending binge are not surprising to anyone familiar with Austrian economics or economic history. Turkey is now plagued with huge deficits, a collapsing currency, and a looming economic crisis, making it the next candidate for a European Union or Federal Reserve bailout. Turkey's combination of low interest rates, money creation, and massive government spending to, quote, stimulate the economy parallels the policies of the U.S. government that the U.S. government has pursued for the past 10 years. Without drastic changes in fiscal and monetary policy, economic trouble in America is just around the corner. Okay, I wanted to show you one of the things from this article that he says towards the end. Since the crisis will result in and he's referring to when this same type of crisis hits the United States because of the irresponsibility of our government, since the crisis will result in a rejection of the dollar's world reserve currency status, individuals should consider alternatives such as gold and other precious metals. Now, he doesn't mention it here, but in the past I've seen that Ron Paul is pretty big on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and that type of thing as well, as a complement to gold and silver. But he's 100% right in what he's saying. I'm going to delete this. Something about Zero Hedge seems to slow my computer down. They must have a lot of ads that are running. I wanted to tie this all together. What you're starting to see right now is you're starting to see articles come here and there where it's showing that the markets may be showing signs of recession. Well, this is one of those articles that came out actually yesterday. Markets may be signaling rising recession risk, Fed study, and they just went through some of the reasons that recession is on the horizon or could be. But what I want to show you is I don't pay as much attention to what people that might have other agendas. I think that most governments, to an extent, control their media to put out the kind of articles they want to put out to make things seem like they're okay. But I think that history is a much greater guide. And so I'm going to show many of you something that you may have never seen or really thought about in your life. I've said it, I've told you before that a recession on average lasts around, we have a recession historically around every 6 years. But here's what you need to know, and do not forget what I say next. In the last 10 years, there's been more money printed, more spending by the governments of the world, not just the United States, but the United States is one of the leaders. More money printing, more spending, ridiculous spending by governments of the world. And they have kept interest rates artificially low, lower than they should be, for a longer period of time than has been done in a long, long time. We are in the middle of completely new ground. Nobody knows. Well, they say nobody knows what's going to happen, but we all know how this ends. We all know how this ends, because what they did to, quote, fix the financial crisis was one big farce for anybody that was really paying attention. I'm going to give you an article that you can go read, and you will see the facts laid out better than I've seen them in a lot of places. But first, what I want to show you is this is a list of the recessions in United States history, but it shows you an important thing. This is starting in 1785, and it tells you the time since the previous recession. 0 years. Each one of these is a recession. This one happened, there was 4 years, 3 years, 3 years, 18 months, 3 years, 1 year, 2 years, 2 years, 4 years. Okay, and then we're going into a different era, the free banking era to the Great Depression. Okay, time since the previous recession. 2 years, 1 year, 2 years, 1 year, 5 years, 2 years, 6 months, 1 year, 10 months, 3 years, 10 months, 1 year, 6 months, 2 years, 10 months, 3 years, 1 year, 1 year. Okay, I'm just going to go through these a little faster, but I'm going to call one out when I see anything over 1. 2, 3 years, 8 months. Let's see. Okay, now here, this is the Great Depression forward. Okay. Time since previous recession. 4 years, 6 years, 8 years. That's a long time since the one before that. That's as long as we've seen so far. 7 years, 10 years. This is the record. 10 years. So that is the record for the most years that have ever passed in history since the beginning of the United States before another recession. And guess how many years that we have had since the financial crisis. We're on around year number 10 right now. And guess what? There's been more money printed, more money spent. We have a higher, let me show you, I love showing you this because it really illustrates the absurdity of the place that not just the United States is, but the world is. We are $21.4 trillion in debt. $21.4 trillion in debt. Before the financial crisis, as I recall, that figure was around $7 trillion. This is ridiculous, it's unsustainable, and it will cause a collapse, period. Okay, I want to go back and make sure this sinks in. The longest we've ever had between recessions is 10 years, ever. We are on the precipice of something awful. I mean, anybody with any common sense who's being intellectually honest knows this. Let me go on. Well, remember, Ron Paul said that your safe haven would be gold and silver. Well, guess what? I believe that digital assets this is what's so as scary as what I've just told you is. The other end of that, the opposite end of that is that if you're paying attention, this is the first time in the history of the world that we've had digital assets at the exact juncture that we are at. And I don't think it's a coincidence. I think we're here. Bitcoin was created. I think it was all created as an answer to everything that they've done. And because it was created as an answer, that's why people like myself recognized it in the first place, is because I was a gold and silver buyer when I first discovered digital assets. And for that reason, when I saw them, I immediately knew them for what they were. And that's why I keep harping on this, is that financial crisis is going to drive the prices through the freaking roof, even over utility and speculation, which I think are going to be huge as well. But remember what Ron Paul said, and I'm going to show you part of the reason I believe so firmly that the digital assets are going to go so crazy. I've told you maybe early when I started doing videos, so some of you have not seen this. Remember, Roosevelt in 1933 issued an executive order and literally made it illegal for you to own gold. Okay? They literally confiscated gold. Part of the reason that digital assets present a huge opportunity is because of the movability of digital assets. What they did in 1933 is literally impossible with digital assets. They couldn't do this if they wanted to, even if they were sending people into people's homes. If you had your digital assets stored the correct way, this could not be done. And the reason this is so significant is what I was talking about with the bailouts before. And I want to show you this. Okay, so let's pretend that I'm right. Let's pretend for a minute that I am correct. I know I'm correct. Let's pretend that it happens and the next financial crisis happens. Well, what I said all along during and after the first financial crisis, I could not believe that our government was able to sell to the American people and to Congress the idea that they were going to bail out failed institutions and just pick and choose who was going to be saved and who was not. They literally bailed out car dealerships. I know people who owned car dealerships for 10 to 30 years and were basically told one day, we've just decided that we're not going to let you keep this car dealership. We're going to take this away from you and give it to somebody else, or we're just going to close this dealership altogether. And the government was involved in the money that was going around and picking and choosing winners and losers. Blatantly illegal, and it was all done in the name of a crisis. Well, let me show you what else was done, because this article, and I want you all to go read this article. This is from the Rolling Stone magazine, believe it or not. Okay, January 4th, 2013, and it says secrets and lies of the bailout. And the reason that this is where it affects you, the secrets and lies of the bailout. And what this talks about is that all of the bailout that went on and everything, they didn't just lie to get the bailout done. They lied while they were doing the bailout, how the bailout was going to be done. Everything about the bailout was a lie. But I want to read you just the introduction to let it really sink in, because what they really did, and part of this is what I'll read to you here in a second, but what was really done is they sold to the world that if everything gets too hairy, we'll just pick who we're going to bail out, and it'll be all of our patriotic duty. But once they opened the doors to bail out, to use taxpayer money to bail out failed companies, whoever happens to be in the good graces of the government at the time, that was the worst thing that ever happened in the history of finance, in my opinion, because the second you do that, you're no longer living in a society that's truly capitalistic. That's something far different than capitalism, when you're picking and choosing winners based on who's in power and who can pass it at the time and who decides. The problem with bailing anybody out is someone has to decide. And if someone has to decide who wins and who loses, you may as well have a dictatorship. Well, if they're deciding to do this, where's the money coming from? The money is coming from the taxpayer. Okay? Well, these guys were so bold as to do bailouts before. And as I've told you before, next time they're going to do bail-ins. And it's going to be a bail-in where the money comes straight out of your bank account. And when it comes out of your bank account, they're just going to close the bank, declare a bank holiday, and the next when the bank opens back up, they'll say, oh, well, it was, the country's in trouble. It's your patriotic duty. We just shaved 10% off of your money. Well, guess what they couldn't do that with is digital assets. Okay? I want to read this to you. Secrets and lies of the bailout. The federal rescue of Wall Street didn't fix the economy. It created a permanent bailout state based on a Ponzi-like confidence scheme, and the worst may be yet to come. I want to read you this one paragraph, and I want you to really let this sink in, because what was done was criminal, and it is the most awful thing that's ever been done in the history of capitalism, or supposed capitalism. It has been 4 long winters since this was written back in 2013. It has been 4 long winters since the federal government, in the hulking, shaven-skulled, alien-nation-esque form of then Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson, Goldman Sachs, ex-Goldman Sachs guy, committed $700 billion in taxpayer money to rescue Wall Street from its own chicanery and greed. To listen to the bankers and their allies in Washington tell it, you'd think the bailout was the best thing to hit the American economy since the invention of the assembly line. Not only did it prevent another Great Depression, we've been told, but the money has all been paid back, and the government even made a profit. No harm, no foul, right? I'm just going to read you this last part. Wrong. It was all a lie. One of the biggest and most elaborate falsehoods ever sold to the American people. We were told that the taxpayer was stepping in, only temporarily, mind you, to prop up the economy and save the world from financial catastrophe. What we actually ended up doing was the exact opposite, committing American taxpayers to permanent, blind support of an ungovernable, unregulatable, hyper-concentrated new financial system that exacerbates the greed and inequality that causes the crash and forces Wall Street banks like Goldman Sachs and Citigroup to increase risk rather than to reduce it. The result is one of those deals where one wrong decision early on blossoms into a lush nightmare of unintended consequences. We thought we were just letting a friend crash at the house for a few days. We ended up with a family of hillbillies who moved in forever, sleeping 9 to a bed and building a meth lab on the front lawn. I could not agree with what is said right there more. When you get a chance, it's called Secrets and Lies of the Bailout, Rolling Stone magazine. Go read this, because this is the real reason that digital assets ever came about. You hear the word decentralized all the time, and if you're really wondering, and you'll hear decentralized, and you'll hear them say, take out the middleman. What they're really saying is, take out these people, that's a nice way of referring to it. Take out these people out of the equation of destroying our money, our hard-earned savings, because they did things that were too risky and they would have gone bankrupt. Goldman Sachs would be no more without this. There's a whole list of them that would be no more. And you know what would have happened if you had let them all fail? Yeah, they said it was the end of the world, but what they meant, it was the end of their world. The end of their world would have meant the rising of a new economy, a good economy that rose up from the ashes. And yes, there would have been ashes, but rose up from the ashes with honesty and real monetary policy that makes common sense and things that would actually help the average saver and not hurt them like they have with these low interest rates for the last 10 years. Why in the world can we not go to a bank and have a decent savings rate right now? The reason we can't is because we bailed these guys out and they ran up our debt into $21 trillion that cannot be paid off. All that can be done is it can be managed at this point, and that's the dirty little secret. Digital assets are the answer to that. Okay, there goes my rant. I do want to show you 2 pieces of news that I saw about digital assets before I go. The first one, it popped up this afternoon. It was about Lloyd's of London. Okay, Lloyd's of London. There was an article just this afternoon. Ooh, my computer's trying to lock up here. It's coming. Lloyd's of London is getting into the wrong thing. Lloyd's of London makes a quiet entrance into the crypto insurance market, and they're basically talking about how Lloyd's of London, which is one of the oldest insurance companies in the world, is coming into the market, and they're going to start insuring cryptocurrency deposits. That's huge, just like Northern Trust was huge that they were dealing with a custody, because these are old money people. When you're seeing the old money people getting into the game, get ready, because your appreciation is coming. Okay, I also saw this. This was a guy's Twitter that I saw yesterday, at Hamid Rowahi, at HAMID ROWAIHY. I like to give credit when I see something good. According to a study by Stanford University and the University of Stockholm, XRP is the best macroeconomic choice over all other currencies to serve as a world currency. I thought this was interesting. So you can go to this guy's Twitter and read this, but I thought that was interesting. And I'm not saying that XRP is going to become the world currency, but as I've told you before, if you were going to create a world currency, this would be the one to use, obviously, and it would be the ultimate cherry on top for we holders. So I thought this was worthy of mentioning. Okay, everybody, you know it's coming. If you do not have your Ledger Nano S yet to store your crypto safer than any way that you can store it, go and get it. It's in the description of my of all my videos. You can click on the link and it'll take you straight to Ledger's website, and you can get a Ledger Nano S. There is no safer way. Do not hold your cryptocurrency on these exchanges. It can be stolen. Also, I've had the crypto payment card, the WireX payment card. You can also get this in the description of my videos. Go and get your card if you haven't already. In the United States, you can sign up for an account, but you cannot yet order the card. You can sign up for an account, and you can then when the cards come available, you'll be able to order it. In the meantime, you'll be able to you can exchange in and out of different currencies and that type of thing through this website as well. I had some people ask me about the security of the card. If you go to WireX's website, go to the personal section and go down here to security, they've got a whole section where they go over all of the things having to do with security. Okay, I am not an investment advisor. I am the digital asset investor. This is for entertainment purposes only. And remember, please subscribe and hit the like button on my videos. I really appreciate everybody watching. I'm about to cross 12,000 subscribers. And don't forget, the Ripple XR fire will be lit by utility. It'll be stoked by speculation and then out of control by financial crisis. That's my prediction. Thanks for listening.